Hey everybody, this is the second video lecture of Chapter 1 of Child Growth and Development. And the previous lecture I wrapped it up talking about generally what research methods are. So for the rest of the chapter is really about theory, and theory is pretty important. Theory is pretty important. I'll be talking a lot about theory throughout the rest of the semester. So I think in this first chapter, I want to give you kind of broad strokes, keeping in mind that I will be talking more specifically or more in-depthly about some of these different theories. Hopefully you'll hear the same names, the same theoretical ideals multiple times throughout the course of the semester. So this slide is really just what is theory and it lists the different ones that I'm going to be talking about. I think of theory as that cardboard backing of a child's puzzle. So some of you, I think, are probably in the child growth and development, or you work with children, but you know those cardboard puzzles, and you take off the pieces and you can still sort of see the engraving on the cardboard where the pieces go. I think of theory as like that. The pieces are the data. The pieces are the data, the observations, and how we put the data in the puzzle creates a different kind of picture. So different theories will focus or give more value to different observations and different kinds of data, and that's how they vary. There's not anything right or wrong about a theory. It's not necessarily opinion, but the utility, the usefulness of theory is being able to see the patterns in the data from different directions. And some of these should sound familiar. For instance, actually all of them are they are all psychological because this is a psychology class. You have Freud, Erikson, Freud's psychosexual theory, which we'll talk about first. Erikson, who's considered he's a student of Freud, so he's kind of a Freudian, but he focuses on different things. You have a whole bunch of different theorists that we refer to as behaviorists. What makes a behaviorist is they're really only interested in the things that can be observed. Then you have Piaget's theory of cognitive development. And I ask as we go through the theories to identify or to think about which ones make the most sense to you based on my explanation, your understanding, your own world experiences, your own life experiences. Which of these theories do you think is the best, or do you like the best? And cognitive theory, so cognitive is about cognition, it's about what goes on up here. Piaget really focuses on how a child thinks different and how the ability to think changes over time. You have a fellow by the name of Vygotsky, who we call a sociocultural theorist. Vygotsky has this, one of the things that we emphasize in his theory is the notion of how we learn. We learn in relationship to others, like learning is a social thing. And then oh man, I meant to look that up before we got to the slide. Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory. So ecological is the notion that we all live in an environment, and the way the different levels or the different parts of the environment influence us. Okay. So I didn't want to spend too much time introducing them. I just want to jump right in and talk more specifically. We're going to start with Freud, which I trust you've probably heard of Freud in other classes. His theory is we're going to credit him with what's called the psychosexual theory. And we have a whole class of theorists that we call Freudians. And to be a Freudian is to emphasize the subconscious, the role of the awareness, the role of our cognition and our personality that is below our conscious awareness. That's what it means to be subconscious. It is below our consciousness, your subconscious. So other theories are also Freudian and actually, to be Freud's contribution to the psychological understanding, social sciences, is this unending acknowledgement that there are things that are influencing us, beliefs, experiences that we are not aware of. That's what it means to be a Freudian, that they are below our awareness. So Freud argued that there are personalities made up of three components. We have these three elements. You've probably heard of these: the id, the ego, and the superego. One way you can think about these elements is you have the angel on one shoulder, that's the superego because it's the best. You have the id, which is kind of like the devil. So you have the angel and the devil, and they're on your shoulders, and they're both vying, they're both negotiating or fighting to control you, right? And that's what the ego is. The ego is the third element of the personality that negotiates between what you've got to do now, your sexual drives, your drives for gratification, and the angel on your shoulder that says, no, 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 you shouldn't do that. So it's the ego that balances this need to self-gratify now with the need to follow all the social and the cultural rules. So the id, the ego, and the id and the superego. I'll put a video up that'll make it a little bit simpler or clarify that. Then you have the stages of development. So, and this, of course, is very, very much summarizing what Freud argued. But so Freud's theory of development argued that, so he would be the ones that go through the stages, the discontinuous, the stages of development, that to be a healthy adult, you pass through these different stages. The reason sometimes he's credited with being sexual is because his emphasis was on physical gratification. And when a baby will seek physical gratification through its mouth. This is what we call the oral stage. So a baby, if you've been with one, they put everything in their mouth. That's how they're learning. They're putting their mouth on everything. They're putting everything to their mouth. They are learning through the oral sensation. The next stage of development from Freud's model is when a child learns to potty train. So this is what we call the anal stage, because there's so much attention on the bowels and the processing of the bowels. Now, an important point about the Freudian model is if a child gets too much gratification from each of these stages or not enough gratification from these stages, they might become fixated, or they'll get sort of stuck and they'll in that stage of development. So if you've ever heard, matter of fact, I just had a student the other day email me and say that they were anal, right? So if you've ever heard of this phrase, that is based on this Freudian model that we get stuck in that stage. And a person the term is actually anal retentive. And this is the notion that you're really uptight, right? You're really anxious about something. You're retention. The opposite of being anal retentive would be like expulsive. So somebody who's anal expulsive. And an anal retentive person is uptight, where an anal expulsive person might be a slob. The same thing about oral stage, right? You might get fixated on that stage and might, like the theory goes, be an overeater or be a cigarette smoker or always have a pencil in your mouth. And the idea is that this is below your conscious awareness and you become fixated in that stage of development. The next stage of development is what we call the phallic stage. And this is if you've ever been around, a child who they're always got their hands down their pants, or they're just sort of obsessive with this particular stage, this particular part of their body. Then the theory goes is that we move to like 6 to puberty, and this is the latency period. This is a period that's not fixated on any sort of physical, sexual stimulation at all. So this is sort of like, what does it say? Like there's a lot of attention to social relationships, to friendships. And then the final stage of development, this is one of the criticisms of Freud, is that once you get to this stage of development, like you're done developing. And this is the genital stage. And this is when you become a healthy, sexually mature adult. And now you get your gratification from your genitals. And that, from Freud's model, is sort of where development stopped. Okay, that's Freud's psychosexual model, and I see that I'm coming to the end of my 10 minutes, so I'm going to stop here, and the next one I'll talk about Erikson.